All right, so the
They're a
abortion
fetus.
issue. Fetus may be a human being, but it's not a person. I have heard this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So what is a person?
What is a person?
What is a person? I mean, I'm not sure I understand what you're telling me. Can you explain to me what is a person and how that is different than a human being? And usually they'll bring up consciousness or ability to take care of themselves, which blows up because invalids, newborn babies, older people, there's anybody that's ever been under anesthesia for surgery, they all fail those tests of being a person by their definition, and it's important to be able to walk down that path. Yeah, those are the two common paths. One is being able to take care of yourself, and the other one is consciousness.
Still breathing.
Well, and we've seen the acts of abortion and how the baby responds to the event that's taking place. That's consciousness.
It's pretty amazing now that because of ultrasound, abortion dropped.
Yeah.
No, pro-life increased in number.
Well, what happens is the statistics are pretty extreme, that once they see an ultrasound, they don't have abortion. If you can get a mother to have an ultrasound, it's very unlikely they're going to go through with an abortion.
It's alive, and
because you can see
it's human.
Yeah, you can see that
It's funny though, they're saying that, before they have heartbeat. I said, I have heartbeat in 2 weeks. My babies have heartbeat, but they do have heartbeat. But the thing is, you can do it with the probe that it's inserted to your vaginal canal.
Yeah, when you have
outside, you cannot
fertility,
hear it.
they check the embryos.
They check it right away.
Internally, right? So
2 weeks.
I mean,
2 weeks.
everything is there. It's just amazing. Is when those two cells come together, they have everything they need for existence. There's nothing lacking other than time.
Yeah, it's just time.
Amazing. Just amazing.
And consciousness, we have no idea when consciousness begins, so we can't say pick a time. But you see, to use consciousness defeats the argument, because there's so many things that can happen to you after you're born that would put you into the. Well, if you could go that far, right? Because if you're not unable to interact with the environment, and
It comes down to they should have a right to do what they want to their body.
that's
That's
the
a
argument.
typical argument
but
that they
it's
say.
Really not their body. It's
Not their body.
Well,
Just a caretaker.
I'll go a little further. I think COVID-19 took away that argument. I haven't seen anybody go after it yet, but I'll say it here on the record since it'll be posted on the internet. We allowed the government to tell us what to do with our bodies. They told us we couldn't go out. We told us we couldn't do this. That's telling me what to do with my body against my will. And we willfully agreed to let someone else tell us what was right and wrong for our body. So
Even if it's kind of stupid
And-
at
and-
times.
and it was some of it was completely stupid, like putting 2 masks on top of its.
Oh no,
itself.
putting mask while you're next to the family that you
spouse.
live with.
Yes, or social distancing for the person you sleep next to every night.
Oh yeah.
Okay, they want those. That is someone telling you what you can do with your body against your will.
The plane ride. Before you get
yes.
into the plane, you have to be 6 feet away, and then you sit elbow
You're
to
6 feet
elbow.
away going in, and then you're right next to your.
It's so stupid. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy.
But that's an example of
Freaking crazy.
people allowing other people to tell them what they can and cannot do with their body. So that argument doesn't work anymore.
Yep.
Oh, it's a healthcare decision. Well, what about the healthcare of the unborn child? Those are equally health requirements.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of nowadays that they accept it because they would check the baby. Oh, the baby has Down syndrome, and they would abort them.
Yep.
Medically abort them.
And I think that's
Yeah,
still,
any kind of genetical problem, they would.
well, I know there was a time in China that if it was a girl, they would abort the baby because they wanted boys. And that's still selective murder is what it is. But you're taking your personal choices and you're inflicting irreparable harm on another human
How
being.
about this? Yeah, the Down syndrome baby that's still inside the womb. What's the difference between the Down syndrome that's already been
Out. Yeah.
Can you murder
Should
them
we
too?
just kill all that Down syndrome kids that are already been born?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, that's, you get, the problem with the abortion arguments is they lead you down the path of euthanasia, where you're picking and choosing,
Who lives and who dies. That's right.
and when do you choose? You know, if a child, they'll always use incest. Incest is it's like, well, you know, they should be allowed to abort their children. Well, what about this 3-year-old that was the product of incest? Should I be able to kill them? They're 3 years old, but they still exhibit all those same requirements that you thought were necessary to terminate. What's the difference? And I think it's a moral decision, and they're trying to say we shouldn't push our morality on them.
It's really crazy here in America because it's like once they were born, even if they're disabled and stuff, I mean, this country, they take care of like those kids. Like other countries, they don't get taken care of. They don't. I mean, I'm amazed the way parents would take care of kids that have problems.
Yes,
I mean, so much trouble, so much like sacrifices that they put on. But then, oh, let's just get rid of it by still in that womb. It's like that's crazy.
What about the fact that, let's say a pregnant woman, this is one that Ken and I talk about so much, that's pregnant, and you kill, how is it
When
worded?
you kill a woman when the baby dies, you're guilty of killing the baby.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what's the difference?
double murder.
Yeah, what's the difference?
I don't know.
I don't either.
It's the law here. It's like double murder if you kill a pregnant
Well,
woman.
I mean,
But then if a mother, you know, chooses to
remember,
abort,
all
she's not.
law legislates morality. So there's some morality where that baby is considered to be a person. And then there's another perspective within the law that that baby is not a person. So it's conflicting, but it's well within our rights to point out that conflict and say we don't agree with it. It's not within their rights to tell us we shouldn't have an opinion. And that's really the
Yeah.
difference. I cannot force my opinion on somebody else, even if I think it's horrific. The government has a right to write their laws any way they want, but I have a right to say I don't agree with it. That's the
Yeah, it
part of
doesn't
this
make
argument.
you
I have a
bigot
right to
or
say why I believe
intolerant.
this.
Yeah.
Well, they're being intolerant when they don't want to hear
Yeah.
my view. Now, I cannot control the law. I think it's horrendous. I think it is murder. But I can't do anything about that if I don't have the law on my side, other than to say this is what I believe. And the fact they just don't want to hear it is really their problem, not ours.
I'm a good argument for, you always hear rape. Well, she's a victim, and somebody was explaining they were a baby whose mother chose to have them, even though she was raped. And she said, but if you kill the baby, now you have two victims.
Yeah.
The mother was a victim, now you made the baby a victim, if you kill them. So,
Well, I like the story Frank Turk gave along that line about the pastor that got up and confronted the atheist in one of his Q&As and basically said his mother was raped, almost killed. He's that baby. And if his mother can make good out of evil, then how much more can God? It's bad things happen.
yeah.
And I don't always, I can't explain it. I don't necessarily understand it, but I know God
Bad
can.
things happen because people choose to do bad.
Yeah.
They have free will to do evil or good.
And that could impact me.
And you choose to do evil. This got nothing to do with God.
But God is capable of using those
Yes.
horrific events for good.
Something good. Yes.
That's what God can do. Despite of the fact that we messed up our world, He can still use our messiness our messed up, decisions to bring something good out of that.
Yeah.
There's another saying of some viewpoints in China,
Mm.
because like the people interview some of the lady who do the abortion,
Mhm.
and then their response was like, this life is so tough. It's my mercy not bringing the baby to the world. They say that.
Mm.
Well, well, no, if you don't believe in God, there's something to that perspective. I mean, I don't agree with it, but it is, life is hard, and
Why bring a life?
They made themselves God.
but effectively they've made themselves God.
Like they were God, you know.
Well, let's do this last question. I don't think we're going to get any further today. How can God exist when there is so much evil in the world? This is the classic problem of
Classic.
evil. And it comes at you from all different perspectives. You have to be ready for this one if you're going to engage. What do you think? Someone says it that way. Well, define evil.
Define evil. What?
It's a good start.
Can you define evil?
Well, I think most people, if you would ask them, what made them come to that conclusion, they'll be a little stumped. It's like, well, everybody knows there's
Okay.
evil in the world.
Susan, one of my coworkers said like, we heard this news that this kid got brutally raped and abused, child. And she made a comment like, this is the reason why I don't believe there's a God. And it was way, way before, so I don't know what to say.
What would you say now? Let me start. So first thing, you have to acknowledge the fact that it's a horrific event. Because the problem of evil is difficult because it's emotional. It's like, yeah, I agree. That is just
And it's just bad.
horrific event.
Terrible.
How do you think it is that we know that it's bad? I think you got to take people to how are they making the moral argument without a basis for a moral argument? How do we know things like that are so bad?
I think, yeah, I think you have to go back to the fact that if you don't believe in God, then anything goes.
Well, that's
Because it's just your opinion against somebody else's opinion. If there's no transcendent like rule or standard, if there's no standard.
yeah. So that's the argument of evil for God is basically saying what is the basis for judging something good or bad, evil or good, and people have to be able to give you a definition and a basis. And if they can't,
So
then-
what would you ask first? If you said like, that's the reason why I don't believe there's God, because of this incident.
well, I think I agree that
What do you say?
incident is horrific. But the question you have to ask, I think I'd go all philosophical on them. The question I ask myself is, how do I know that is bad? And see what they would say.
Well, I'm pretty sure because I know her, she's gonna say like, come on, that's bad. Somebody's, raping a child and it's a child.
But
that it's wrong.
how do I know that bad? Because that rapist didn't think it was bad.
So I would ask, so you believe God is responsible for other people, the decisions that?
No, we said there's no God. That's why there's no God.
They don't think God is
It's
guilty. They think God
There's-
doesn't exist because,
She said there's no. This is the reason I don't believe there's God, because bad things happen.
but,
She believes there's God.
well, of course,
blame it on
you're
God.
making a moral argument, right? The thing is, the person that perpetrates that evil thing
Do you think
thought
it's
they
good or
didn't
bad?
think it was bad or they wouldn't have
Who
done
wouldn't
it.
done it?
Hitler is always the classic one I go to. It's like, he thought he was actually helping
Doing a favor
humanity.
for humanity.
He even did it in the name of God, maybe not the God we believe,
Well-
because he thought he was purging the world of
Bad stuff.
the bad things, so we call imperfections in the world. But he didn't think what he was doing was wrong.
No.
We think it was wrong. So it's not innate in us unless we have a standard. The people that don't share the standard are always the ones that perpetrate the activities because they've put that standard away. But you and I, or third person, can always come to a standard that's universal. Doesn't matter what country you're in, what time in history you're in, the exploiting of a young child, like was just described, will be considered bad. Why is that? It's cross-cultural. Okay, so it's not culturally based.
Standard.
It's not based on human flourishing. It has to be based on a standard that's transcendent because
Well,
it doesn't
everybody
matter
feels that
where
way.
you're at. People feel that
feel
way.
that. Yeah.
It doesn't mean people don't do horrible things in cultures. Cultures accept human
So, okay,
sacrifice.
So
but
let's say
children,
she said like, you know it's bad. You know, abusing a child is bad.
But I have to always ask myself, why do I know it's bad?
So no, like talk to me like how do
No,
you,
no, I said, I agree with you, but the question really is, how do we know it's bad? It really is a question you have to ask. How do we know that? Because
well, I
every-
guess you got to go back to the rapist doesn't think so. The abuser doesn't think so because that's the reason why they did it.
yeah,
They did it because they think there's something wrong with doing that.
yes.
But it goes back to innocence, whether they're stealing, whether they're robbing. They don't think it's wrong.
Yeah. They
So
think it's okay.
It really comes down to why do we think it's wrong and what was our basis for thinking it's wrong?
It's wrong. Okay.
That's what we always have to drill down to, because if I have no basis, then it's just
Anything
opinion.
goes.
It's just
Yeah,
opinion.
It's your opinion.
Right? And then your opinion is really no greater than my opinion.
The opinion of the rapist.
You cannot say the rapist is wrong if anything
If there's
goes.
no- yeah.
If truth is relative, you can't say that horrible person did anything horrible. So they have to recognize that there has to be a standard, and there has to be a basis for the standard, and that's usually where they drill down. I mean, Sam Harris's argument was the best I've ever seen presented, and it got destroyed.
And then it's like, nope, doesn't work.
Well, Sam Harris is one of the new atheists, and he wrote a book called The Moral Landscape. And his idea that our moral choices all are part of human flourishing and the way it progresses through time, thinks it doesn't work because we have Hitler, Stalin, even Mother Teresa. I'm sure she's a wonderful person, but I would not want her version of human flourishing. She would be an equity person. You know, so I mean, everybody, no matter how good they are, including me, cannot be the basis for,
I have a different version.
because I'm always going to choose what's beneficial
For
to me.
Yeah.
It's human flourishing of me,
Yes.
not you, me.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Humans always pick their version
Yeah.
unless there's something transcendent. And that's the reason that you're having a transcendent standard. There must be a source. Because it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
I remember Jordan Peterson said, just go ahead, forgive yourself. Why do you feel guilty? And it bothers you in the middle of the night. You wake up and it's like, oh man, I did something really horrible. Just forgive yourself.
Yeah, that's what Jordan Peterson, you know, who he is, and he makes the claim based on his years as a clinical psychologist that nobody ever gets
Nobody
away
gets
with
away with
anything.
anything.
It
Nobody.
haunts them.
It
And
haunts them.
I think that's,
Even in this life, not like life to come, now. You keep lying to yourself, you cannot.
Takes its
He
toll.
will,
it
he
takes
will
its
hunt
toll
you.
on you.
Body, soul, and spirit.
We are designed a certain way, and when you violate that design, it's going to weigh on you.
He will weigh on you.
Yes, it will.
I'm thinking about that lady,
Sure.
the one who was raped and then there's no God, the one you just mentioned.
Right.
I'm thinking maybe in her mind, she have like a perspective of God. Somebody can protect
That's
her
true.
or
That's
help her
true.
when
That's true.
I think you're right, Sonny.
That's true.
And
They might be thinking, you have to explore that and see like, do they think like, what do you mean by God?
That's,
How do you define God? Like, so God, so for you to say that there is God, that this kid should be protected from those bad things that you described. Because if
that's
that's
actually, that's a really good
Yeah.
way, actually. I hadn't
Because
thought
if-
of that.
if it's like, there's no God because there's no protection for those innocent people. You can use it to abortion too.
Well,
It's like, okay, God didn't protect the baby, then there's no God.
but that's a good question, because effectively you get to the point where, look at the, God allows free choice, because without free choice, there's no love. And sometimes those free choices are not good for us.
No, that's the thing that you can explore, like,
There's the
why do you think, like the concept of God in their mind?
Yeah.
So that's why they come to a conclusion that there's no God, because if he's around, he should have been protecting
Yeah,
this
no, that's
innocent
true.
people.
Because basically, they're not believing in a God that we don't believe in either. It's not who God
She was
is.
believing in God, but she didn't believe God was good.
Yeah,
That was the
probably.
thing.
So you have to explore that.
How do you know he's a good God?
What he thinks, what God means to her.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of drill down like, that God you
If
believe,
she
I don't believe
believes there's
either.
no God, then why would she blame him?
Well, I think that it's funny because it's, how often do we say, oh, this is the proof that there's no God? Well, if you really believe there was no God, why are you talking about it?
Yeah.
Because then if it's irrelevant, then why do you make a big deal when you think you have an event that proves your point? Well, because you're trying to prove your point, because you haven't proven your point to
And then
yourself.
the same people,
It's like, there is no God, but I'm so mad at him. Like,
Go ahead, Walter.
So most of the questions actually, I will say we want to extract the connection between the observed and the perceived.
Mhm.
So we have to know the connection. So why this connect to the God existence?
I think you're right. I think that's the idea of the questions, to try to dig down a little, to figure out what their perception is so that you can address it with evidence, right? Because again, the whole idea is to try to help people to find the truth.
So I think with this question, then we can say like, so how can God exist? Like, what do you mean by, how do you define God? Like, what do you mean by a God?
that's
What is
true.
God
That's
to
what you
you?
need to find out.
What is
first.
God?
That'd be a really good path.
That you say that it doesn't exist because of the evil. Because typically, yeah, that they would think like, there's no God because no protection of the innocent people. Or there's bad things, like there's, he should stop that if he's a good God, if he's God. If he's a good God, then he should stop that.
Well, but
Right.
the whole thing is they're blaming God for something that their worldview doesn't protect you from either. So they're blaming it as evidence that there's no God, yet their worldview says it's completely okay, and there isn't. If you're really a naturalist atheist, there is no right and wrong.
No.
And so I can't perceive anything as right and wrong, so I can't even see it as evidence against God because I have no basis to make the judgment. So I mean, their argument actually goes in the circle. You have to have a God to say there is no God, because if there is no God, then I can't even say that this is evidence for anything, because there is no evidence for evil if there's not a standard. That's the reason you what do you mean by God? How do you define evil? And then see if you can't connect the two.
Yeah. Because those are different from different individual
Yeah.
would have a different
yeah, it's sometimes,
perspectives.
yeah, sometimes it's like they say statements, but that's not really the root of the problem. It's
Yeah. They have
something
something different,
else.
something else.
It's